On Tuesday, October the 18th at 7:30 at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, Winnipeg's Groundswell will present their second concert of the season. Called Standing Wave Ex Machina, this concert will feature the Standing Wave Ensemble from Western Canada. Made up of 6 virtuoso musicians, the Standing Wave Ensemble has mesmerized audiences throughout the world with their intrepid performances of the latest in boundary-breaking new music. This concert on the 18th will feature music of Montreal-based composer James O'Callaghan, East Coast composer Becca Sims, and Manitoba composers Kara Nathaniel and Rebecca Schroeder, and Gord Fitzell. All performed by this amazing ensemble. Here to tell us more about this concert, I am joined here in our Classic 107 studio by the curator for this concert and one of the composers whose music will be performed on the 18th, Gord Fitzell. Hey, Gord, good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Nice to be here.
Mm-hmm. So I want to start up with a conversation. First of all, not talking about the concert, just this is the first time since the pandemic that you've been able to see your students at the University of Manitoba live and in person and work with them. How does that feel?
Oh, it's like a brand new world. And I haven't had the worst of it because I work with a lot of small groups and small classes. And some of the time, we're able to still meet. But it's been a completely new world for my colleagues who teach large classes, and they have, just like the students, been teaching and learning from their living rooms, etc. So it's been just life-changing, I think. But really for all of us, because it's changed the environment on campus. I mean, there was a bit of a feeling of normalcy this September. There was some activity because the last few, I really felt for the first year students who would, right out of grade 12, excited to get to university, and it's just a ghost town a couple of years ago. But now there's lots of activity. There were, dunk tank and all kinds of fun stuff. So it was a step in the right direction. And I mean, I jest in part, but it really adds to a feeling of optimism and excitement and promise for the year ahead. It really does.
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, this concert that's happening on the 18th that features the Standing Wave Ensemble, it was supposed to happen last year, right? But got bumped because of the pandemic. Can you talk about some of the logistical issues that arose last year and how you yourself felt once you heard that the concert was going to be postponed?
Sure. I mean, it's in a way, this is something that we've all dealt with, the idea of, okay, we're on round number 3 of this plan, version number 4 of that endeavor. So this goes back a long way, speaking particularly with Rebecca, the violinist of the group, who does a lot of the artistic decision-making and booking and that sort of thing. And so we were talking about it a long time ago, so long really that because Standing Wave, the ensemble, is so dedicated to the most recent works there are, that really the program has changed a little bit since maybe 3 or 4 years ago when we first hatched the idea. And so one of the things I'm excited about, and maybe we'll talk about in a bit, is some of the pieces are brand new. They have dates on them of 2022. So everything, although the concert's been in the works for a while, it's really been updated to the minute, and we've got brand new pieces.
And evolving constantly.
Yeah. Which is really the way with a lot of new music groups. They're really in the moment and playing the music of their times. And so that part hasn't changed, even though we have been waiting a few years for Standing Wave to get here due to COVID.
You're the curator for this concert. Was it you that wanted Standing Wave here? Was it like when you were going to be the curator, did you say, I want Standing Wave to be here at the concert? And can you tell us a little bit about the group?
Sure. Yes, that was my initiative, as we have a variety of curators as part of Groundswell, and this is what I've been wanting to do for a while. They're one of Canada's greatest new music groups, and especially in Western Canada, prairies in Western Canada, one of the few dedicated groups that have been around for a lot of years. So 30 plus years they've been around, a little bit of membership change, of course, over those decades. But during that time, it's really hard to believe the words I'm about to say. They've premiered over 100 new works. They've recorded, I'm not even sure how many CDs, maybe half a dozen or so, toured all over the place. And outside of Central Canada, there are very, very few of these groups. So they're absolute veterans of the field. And I've worked with them a few times over the years in Vancouver. And I've been really excited to get them out to Winnipeg because I know people are going to love what they do. And they're so, as I say, dedicated to brand new music that they jumped all over the opportunity to write music for composers from this area. And we've put together a program of all Canadian composers from across Canada. In terms of telling you more about them, I guess I mentioned some of their CDs, their most recent ones just from last year, and they had a big success with that. They were nominated for a Juno for Classical Ensemble of the Year, I think. And it's a crazy album you have to check out sometime if you haven't. It's called 20th Century Remix. And so they're these classical composers, but they've been asked to base a piece, not really arrange a piece that exists, but take a pre-existing piece as a bouncing off point, a starting point, and create a re-envisioned version or a re-envisioned new piece based on. And the composers chose just the most wildly varied pieces you can imagine, from older music to Bartók to Justin Timberlake. And Nicole Lizet did, well, no, I don't remember the group, but it's the Spin Me Round, Right Round, Baby Right Round, like a record, etc.
Yeah.
So that to classical
Total
music.
80s. Yeah.
So that's part of what the group is about. There are no rules. We'll try anything, and really trying to be of the current moment.
Let's talk about your piece that is going to be performed on the 18th. You're going to help me out with the pronunciation here. Deus Ex Machina, The 9 Lives of Schrodinger's Cat. Is that right? They performed your piece. What was it like having that piece performed by the Standing Wave Ensemble? And what can you tell us about the piece?
Sure. Well, it was an absolute pleasure working with them and having it performed on the concert. The piece has a little bit of a theatrical element that comes in toward the end. I don't want to say too much about that. Well, in the piece, I do something that I don't know why, but I've started to do in several of the last number of pieces, where I contrast improbable, unusual pairings of ideas or things or concepts. So in this particular case, there's Deus Ex Machina, which is from Greek tragedy, this plot device where it seems like there's no solution to this crazy predicament, and then in Greek time and ancient times, it would literally be a machine, and God in the machine would come in and rescue the protagonist or something like that. So, and now it takes on a broader term for just simply an improbable solution to a problem. So that's the Deus Ex Machina part, and then I compare, contrast, find similarities and differences in a way with elements of quantum physics, and that's where the Schrodinger's cat comes in.
What is Schrodinger's cat?
Man, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that. But okay, so I'll start by saying I have no business explaining quantum physics to you or anyone, but I did put it in my title. Let's see. So Schrodinger was a mathematician, and it's based on his mathematics that a lot of early work in quantum physics was accomplished, I understand. And he's most famous for this thought experiment whereby inside a sealed box, hypothetically, there is a cat, a Geiger meter measuring radioactivity and poison in a flask or something like that. And the idea is it's supposed to illustrate the paradox in his own mathematics in this, what's called quantum superposition. And so before I lose all of your listeners, I'll say, like most of you, I'm sure, I only understand it up to a point, but enough to understand the concepts. And so I've incorporated in my music elements from from related concepts. And so one of them is pairing of instruments that I use to reflect wave particle duality, that kind of thing. So if there are any quantum physicists in the audience, they'll pick up on it right away.
Right in. There's also going to be music on the program by two up-and-coming Manitoba composers, Rebecca Schroeder and Ciara Nathaniel. What can you tell us about these two composers, and where did you hear about them and their music?
They're both Manitoban composers, as you say, and they're in fact both master students at the University of Manitoba.
Okay.
And they're actually friends, as it turns out, but they've written very different pieces aesthetically. Rebecca Schroeder's Biosphere explores a lot of colors and timbres and just the real focus on the quality of sound. And Ciara Nathaniel's Beams of Light, I would say, uses harmony and rhythm to create an alluring mood.
It's great. So you've heard these pieces before. Are they students of yours?
Yes, they are students of mine and my colleague Örjan Sandred. I actually have heard these before because, as we referenced a moment ago, Standing Wave was to come here.
Right.
And so elements of all that we had packaged together in that came to fruition. So they actually did a reading session via Zoom about 8-10 months ago, which they were really kind enough to offer to do again in person. So that's coming up. But also, these commissions were intended for a concert to be a little bit earlier, but finally the concert is now coming to Winnipeg. But the group was kind enough to put these two pieces. I guess they really liked the two pieces. They put them on a concert in Vancouver earlier this year. So I've heard the recording of that, and so have the composers, which is really great for local composers, Rebecca and Ciara, because they get a performance out in Vancouver and in Winnipeg where family and friends can come check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So yours is one of two electroacoustic pieces on the program. The other one is by the Montreal-based composer James O'Callaghan, his 2020 work In an Archipelago. I was listening to this piece. It's on SoundCloud, and it is quite a piece. It's great. How did you first become familiar with James O'Callaghan and his music?
I've known James for probably 20 years now. He's originally from BC, and that's a great question in that I think I first met James O'Callaghan at a Standing Wave concert, quite seriously, about 20 years ago, when he was maybe 15 years ago, and he was quite a young man, just first getting into composition. There are many wonderful things about James O'Callaghan, but one kind of interesting, quirky thing is that he wasn't trained in classical music the way most classical musicians are, most classical composers are. So he comes to it from another angle, and he's and that gives his music, I think, a different quality and a different raison d'être, maybe. But I mean, one thing I can say about James is that he's got quite a career going. He's well known around the world. In fact, he just moved to Berlin, I believe, full time after many, many years living in Montreal. And that's because there's demand for his music in Europe and elsewhere. He's won really impressive awards. But the thing that I'm interested in is just being able to share with Winnipeg audiences that artistry that he's developed. He's such a hard worker, but he also has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in contemporary trends right now. And we were speaking just before we went on air about our mutual friend Ben Reimer, who's recruited to come in and do some of the computer work for James's piece. As you say, like mine, it's one of the only two that involves electronics as well as the
Right.
6 instrumental players. So it's very maybe this is a nice quality to leave off on for James. It's very intricate and technical, but it also has such a flow and an arc to the music as it unfolds over time.
I was saying how I heard it on SoundCloud, and one of the things, there's a description by him about the piece. He said it's composed during the pandemic, and it's interesting that you say intricate, because my understanding is one of the things that he wants to do is take, again, these pairs of instruments, and he calculated it out to 127 possibilities, between the instruments and trios of instruments and whatever. And there's just sort of just these multi layers going on all at the same time.
Well, that's just the kind of thing I'm talking about. But congratulations on doing your homework. That is very impressive. But that's just the kind of way that James works. There's this intricacy, copious amounts of charts and graphs, so to speak, but then he uses that information in such a, as I say, fluid way, and there's an artistry that flows through it that the piece works completely without knowing any of that. And that's what I really like about James, is he's able to transcend the structure of the work and maybe arrive at an emotional impact.
Sounds great. There's going to be music on the program by Becca Sims. She's been nominated for help me with this, Gaudamus Award. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I pronounce it Gaudiamus, but yes.
What is a Gaudiamus Award, and what can you tell us about Becca Sims' music? What's it like?
Sure. Well, to the extent of my knowledge, the Gaudiamus Award is, now where is that out of? Holland, I think, but it certainly is one of the most prestigious in the whole world for new works, and coincidentally, James actually has been nominated for that as well. So that's quite remarkable, and I hadn't even thought of that connection. But that's the level of success that these relatively young Canadian composers, I think they're maybe in their 30s still, are having worldwide. Becca's someone that I haven't met too many times in person, but we were on a few committees online, and she's another one who has followed her muse all over the place. She just moved to Scotland, where she's doing some teaching at the conservatory there, the Conservatoire. And so this is part of what Standing Wave is about, is drawing people, especially Canadians, who may or may not be living in Canada, who are really doing interesting things and approaching music in a different way.
How would you describe her music?
Well, she had a piece recently played in Winnipeg, so some of your listeners might have heard the group from Marseille,
right,
not so long ago, Telemaque,
yeah.
Ensemble Telemaque. And that piece is fairly representative in the sense that, a little bit like I was describing for Rebecca Schroeder, very interested in exploring all the types of sounds that an instrument can make, and structuring a piece that might exploit a certain element of that. So, and I can say this, following that concert, there were a number of people who came up to me and said, "Oh, I just really love that piece by Becca Sims. Tell me more about her." So I'm really excited to bring this piece. Now, this particular piece of hers I haven't heard. It's brand new. I don't think anyone has heard it yet. This is the premiere, the world premiere happening at this concert. So I can't tell you too much about that particular piece, which is just the way we all want it, because let's see, the oldest piece on the concert is mine at 2019, and there's several at 2022, and hers is a world premiere, as I say. So it's just a dream come true.
And the last composer on the program it's described in the Groundswell on the Groundswell website as a rising star, Mary Alice Conrad. What can you tell us about her?
I can't tell you too much about her, except to say that my knowledge of her is as a relatively young composer, I think in her 20s, and may still be doing doctoral work in Ontario. But I wish I could tell you more. You'll have to ask me after the concert. She's the one composer that I don't know a great deal about, and it's on Standing Wave's recommendation that she's on this concert, so I couldn't be more pleased. But I think it was Standing Wave who introduced her music to me, and since then I've seen her name around, and she's another up and riser for sure.
And so our listeners will just have to go and check out the concert to hear it. Gord, the concert on the 18th sounds just great. It's going to be a great show. For you as a curator, what do you hope people will take away once all things are done, once the concert is over?
I guess some balance of a thread of continuity through the works, and yet a breadth of where each piece has taken them. I mean, there are elements of unity in that all the composers are Canadian, maybe with the exception of myself, all quite young and really finding their way in the compositional world. Although, as I say, some like James are very successful and established composers despite their age. And maybe last but not least, the artistry of a veteran group like Standing Wave.
Sure.
And I think maybe this is one thing to keep in mind, is not just the individual virtuosity of each player, but the ensemble virtuosity is just incredible to watch, the rising of one line and receding as another takes prominence. Especially in new music, it's quite rare, as I say, because they are a dedicated new music group. And many of them play in the Vancouver Symphony, but others come from very different areas. They'll be more likely to be found in the lofts of downtown Vancouver and in the improv scene, for example. But they all come together in this cultural phenomenon that is Standing Wave because of their interest in new music in all its different colors.
Mm-hmm. It just sounds amazing, Gord. Thanks so much for stopping by. For our Classic 107 listeners, once again, the concert is on Tuesday, October the 18th at 7:30 at the Muriel Richardson Auditorium at the WAG. Tickets will be available at the door or at Groundswell's Eventbrite page, which you can access through Groundswell's website, gswell.ca, or you can go to classic107.com, and I have provided a direct link to the Eventbrite page in the article that is now up on classic107.com. Gord, it's great to see you again. And you were saying that you're old. You're only a couple of years older than me, and I'm young. I'm just going to put it out there.
Perfect. I'll take it. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks again.